Hello, this is not John T. Rhapsodies, purveyor of awesome old-school audio stories. Mr. Rhapsodies has asked me to read his original stories, all written in an old-school style. If you like this story, please consider clicking the thumbs up and subscribe icons. This will help the channel grow, and it will help you to stay notified of new stories. And so, let us together hear the words of old. The Curious Case of Jibb versus Common Sense by John T. Rhapsodies, Esquire. In the fall of 1872, when men wore mutton chop sideburns as symbols of authority, and a properly manicured mustache could win you almost any public office except coroner, there lived in the bustling town of Pokeweed Junction a very young lawyer named Cornelius Jibb, Esquire, a hard-won title he clung to as tightly as a drowning man to a floating barrel of grade-A maple syrup. Cornelius obtained his law license much like someone might come by a family recipe, handed down, well-worn, and with a few missing proportions or ingredients filled in by trial and error. Like the late Abraham Lincoln, Cornelius never set foot inside a law school, having read the law, as they used to call it, in the creaky back office of Ephraim Ledger, a retiring attorney whose filing system was more rumor than record. Lawyer Jibb hung up his meager shingle, bearing only his name, which was the only advertising lawyers were allowed to do back then, just under the sign of Mrs. Waxbury's General Store and Taxidermy Emporium. He set up his legal office in Mrs. Waxbury's spare broom-closet on the second floor, in exchange for a 3% commission from any monies he were to obtain by hook, crook, or verdict, as well as an agreement to feed her cats each day and sweep out the store once a week. During his first 6 months of licensure, Cornelius only had 3 clients, one who mistook him for a dentist, one who paid him in rutabagas, and one who insisted on representing himself, and then blamed Cornelius for losing the case anyway. Lawyer Jibb passed most days by rereading Blackstone's commentaries and trying to look like he wasn't hungry. But things changed quickly for Lawyer Jibb, as things often do, on a Wednesday afternoon when a dandy gentleman sauntered into his broom-closet office wearing purple socks and a cravat so starched it could have served as a splint for the injured leg of a rented mule. The man introduced himself as Thomas Grubb, a name that sounded like it should come with a side of coleslaw and a cat head biscuit. For those who are unfamiliar with the term, fear not, it refers to the shape, not the substance of said biscuit. "Good afternoon, sir. I require your legal expertise," Grubb said, with the air of a man who regularly lost count of his summer homes. Cornelius quickly sat up straight and adjusted his own cravat, which was dyed with indigo and fashioned from an old dish rag, fashioned from a flour sack. He cleared his throat and said, "Certainly, sir. Is it a criminal case, civil, property, maritime, or perhaps emotional distress?" Mr. Grubb stroked his pointed beard and declared, "I am here today because of an egregious breach of contract. A certain upright lady of town has broken our engagement. She alleges that I am, and I quote, an emotional equivalent to a turnip. I demand monetary restitution or even specific performance. She is an excellent pie maker after all." Trying to stifle an incredulous smile, Cornelius asked, "And you want me to file a lawsuit against her?" "Why, of course I do," Grubb said. "I want to be made whole from the pain, the suffering, and the outrageous indignity of being compared to a turnip." Smelling the prospect of real money, or at least something more profitable than sweeping out a store and feeding Mrs. Waxbury's cats, Cornelius stood up with his finger pointing in the air like an exclamation point and said, "We shall make you whole to the fullest extent of the law." And so, the very next morning, Cornelius Jibb, Esquire, filed the lawsuit on behalf of his client, Mr. Grubb. The townsfolk soon dubbed the case Jibb versus Common Sense, signaling their skepticism of Grubb's lawsuit. Nevertheless, public interest climbed the very highest of heights. Pokeweed Junction had not been this entertained since Mayor Klutz caught his beard in his newly purchased mechanical butter churn. On the day of trial, people of all sorts piled into the small courtroom, packed like hymnals in a church pew, each one wedged in, stiff-backed and silent, waiting for the bell to toll, or in this case, the opening call to order with the gavel. There were ladies in bonnets, farmers wearing ill-fitting wedding suits, bootleggers pretending to be barristers, and even one man who thought it was a livestock auction. Throughout the trial, Cornelius quoted the Bible, Latin, Greek, Shakespeare, and an article from the ladies' magazine Harper's Bazaar for a touch of emotional resonance. He gesticulated, wept when necessary, and even slammed books in a manner that made no actual sense, but certainly sounded legal. Meanwhile, Miss Matilda Featherstone, the defendant, was calm and demure as she sat with her lawyer, a relic of a man who had obviously practiced law before such laws existed. Miss Matilda testified that Mr. Grubb did not see fit to propose marriage with a ring, even a modest one, but with a coupon for a year's supply of pickled beets, that he had suggested his ideal honeymoon would be quietly listening to his own breath, and that the only real passion she had ever seen in him was when he alphabetized his cravats. She concluded her testimony by declaring, "I simply could not, in good conscience, marry a man who once argued with a mirror." The courtroom onlookers all appeared to nod in unified agreement. Jibb took in a deep breath as he remembered it was his duty to press on for his client, Mr. Grubb, even though he was starting to agree with the defendant in his heart. In his closing argument, Jibb said with a grand flourish, "Gentlemen of the jury, if we allow hearts to be broken and discarded with such impunity, what's next? Will we marry merely for love? Verily, I tell you that if that happens, our town, nay, our country, will collapse like an undercooked souffle." Silence fell upon the courtroom until a lone, short clap was heard. It was the town drunk, but still. The jury deliberated for an hour and returned with a verdict. The foreman declared, "We the jury find for the defendant, Miss Featherstone." Cornelius's heart sank like a flatboat with a busted hull, slow at first, then sudden as sin, till it settled in the muddy bottom of his chest where hope once floated like a corked bottle with no message inside. His client, Thomas Grubb, left the courtroom in a huff without even acknowledging his lawyer. Having lost what the town called the case of Jibb versus Common Sense, Cornelius prayed for the courage to walk tall while venturing back to his broom-closet law office and his sweeping and cat-feeding duties for Mrs. Waxbury. Late the next morning, Miss Matilda Featherstone arrived at Cornelius's office. She was smiling like someone who had both won a case and successfully baked an amazing peach pie, leaving just enough sweetness in the air to make you forget the mess behind her. But she was not merely smiling like someone who had done those things. She had actually won the case and was now holding an amazing peach pie. "I stopped by to thank you," Matilda said. "For losing the case?" Cornelius asked. "For trying against all odds," she said. "That takes courage." "Well, I thank you, Miss Matilda," Cornelius said. Matilda then said, with an especially big smile, "I am thinking of suing someone myself, and that you might help me with that." "What kind of case?" Cornelius asked. "I would like to sue my second cousin Clarence for persistent social ineptitude and crimes against conversation. When he found out I broke things off with Thomas Grubb, he asked me to marry him by sliding a note under my door which said, 'You'll do.'" Cornelius tilted his head, thinking he understood what she wasn't saying. He asked, Would you like to discuss this important case over coffee? Matilda winked and said, only if it comes with emotional complexity and no references to canned vegetables, ornate mirrors, or how to alphabetize cravats. They left together, taking the pie with them. 1 year later, they married. Thomas Grubb married a woman from Little Rock who claimed she liked quiet men. It was later determined they were both part of a secret society, advocating alphabetizing anything and everything to help bring about a more orderly world. And so, you might ask, what is the moral of this story? There are several, including that in law, as in love, you may not always win the case for your own client, but sometimes you might win over your opponent, and maybe even your favorite kind of pie, in this case because she preferred the cut of Cornelius's jib. And if you don't understand the reference to liking the cut of someone's jib, I heartily encourage you to look it up. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story and would like to hear more, please click the thumbs up icon and subscribe to the channel. Please also consider telling your friends that they too should hear the words of old.